is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. As we were coming on the air, Riley Smith got traded back to Vegas for Brendan Brisson and a third-round pick. Brendan Brisson, the son of super agent Pat Brisson. I'm sure they had to call him and clear that. But anyway, that's just a minor trade. We're still waiting on some bigger trades that could happen today or while we're on the show tomorrow, since the trade deadline is 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. We will be live from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. That could get a little bit spicy, but we got a 9-game slate here. We have 2 really big totals early, 2 really big totals late, 2 fairly big totals in the middle. This is a very wild slate. I'll be 100% honest with you. I don't remember who played yesterday. I know I barely cashed, and I know I trashed Tanner Pearson, and he led the slate in fantasy points. I do remember who played, but I played Ullmark. I played Toronto 1, and I played Washington 2. I snuck in there. Listen, in the single entry life, if you cash, you take it and run. You have your lots of boring times with single entry. You have a couple sweats a year. You need to capitalize on them, but can't hit the nuts if you don't play. So here we are. And to help break down this 9-game slate with me, as always, Slim Cliffy. What's going on?
Yeah, not a whole lot. Like you, I snuck into the cash last night. I had a Washington power play stack, but I left off Strome. That worked out pretty well because I got the 3 goal scores, but John Carlson did nothing. I had a 2-man stack of Buchnevich and Thomas. I left off Jake Neighbors. That didn't work out in my favor. If I put in Neighbors, I have a really good night. That's how that goes sometimes on short slates. So, but like you said, can't complain about cash. 9 games tonight, lots of big totals. I mean, you have the new look Tampa Bay lineup at home against Buffalo. You have Florida at home against Columbus. You have Edmonton at home against Montreal, and Colorado at home against San Jose is the 2 late games. That is really interesting. Should be a pretty fun slate. Hopefully there are multiple paths to victory, but weird things happen in a single night of hockey.
Yeah. And I forgot what I was going to say. So let's move on. Yeah, I mean, we have 9 games. We probably should jump into it fairly quickly, as I do have to pick up my older son. He will, revolt if I don't, if I'm a little bit late. Just let me know in the chat who you want me to bash today so we can lock in 30 DK points. But let's get into the slate before we do. Just wanted to say thank you guys again for tuning in with us all the time. There are already over 100 of you watching in between Twitter and YouTube. You can watch on either. You can't really chat on Twitter. So if you want to talk some sauce, you got to be in the YouTube chat. But if you do want to go premium, you can click that top link for DFS. That will get you, if you use promo code Stochastic15, that'll get you 15% off any subscription. Golf's in full swing. MLB's coming up. Like I said, as soon as I think it's in 2 weeks is opening night or something like that, 2 or 3 weeks. As soon as packages go live, we'll get you a promo code for that, so we can get you better than 15% off. If you do want to jump into the sports betting sides of things, you can click that OddsShopper link and sign up for Portfolio EV. I think if you go to oddshopper.com, actually just click the link. I think there's a 7-day free trial. Just click the link and check it out. I'm not too up on the OddsShopper stuff. Especially during hockey season, I try to focus on DFS. Outside of hockey season, I'm more sports betting. But yeah, let's get into this slate. First game of the night. Buffalo Sabres with a 2.6 total heading into Tampa Bay. The Lightning have a 3.8. The Lightning yesterday traded for Yanni Gourde and Oliver Bjorkstrand. They will be on the third line with Gage Gonclaves. I don't think either of Cirelli. Oh no, they should be, right? Or because Seattle's on this slate, they should accrue fantasy points.
I mean, check on that for you. Yeah, no, Bjorkstrand and Gourde are, well, I guess Yeah, Gord. Bjorkstrand and Gord are just straight up in the Tampa line. Like,
okay. Yeah, they will accrue fantasy points since Seattle's on the slate. Anyway, they're running Kucherov, Gensel, Point, Hagel, Cirelli, Paul, Gonclaves, Gord, and Bjorkstrand. Bjorkstrand on Tampa is going to be interesting. I saw a lot of people just like big mad that he's starting on the third line. It's like, give John Cooper a game to get used to him. He's going to move up. I think eventually he'll move up, but like maybe Cooper wants 3 lines, and they're very familiar with Yanni Gord, so they can run 3 lines this way. Buffalo going Thompson, Peterka, Kulik, Tuck, Cousins, Greenway, Quinn, McLeod, Benson. Don't have too much interest here in Buffalo. Hagel, Cirelli, Paul, a lot better defensively than Hagel, Cirelli, Gergensons. They're going to go out against Buffalo 1. Like, Buffalo 1's fine. The price is a little high for a 2.6 road total, and it's a tough 5-on-5 matchup. So like MME only for me for Buffalo 1. Buffalo 2 is a little bit interesting because they're going to get a bunch of that point matchup, and that line isn't great defensively. Cousins, Tuck, and Greenway have played very well together in a small sample. Tuck and Greenway have played well without Cousins, so I don't mind that Tuck, Cousins, Greenway line as a filler on this slate. You want to go to Quinn, McLeod, Benson. That's fine if you need the extra salary. They're only 11,300. I'll throw them in a basket of filler lines if you're looking to, like do something with Colorado, power play stack, Edmonton, spend up for something else expensive like Carolina or something like that. So Buffalo 2, it's my favorite line on Buffalo. I don't know if I'm running out to play them, but Buffalo 2 and 3 in MME or filler lines, they're fine for me. My interest is on the Tampa side. And really, if you're in single entry, you're really going to have to make a choice here because Tampa and Florida have 3.8 totals. Colorado and Edmonton have 3.9. Edmonton is the cheapest at 19.6. Colorado is the most expensive at 23.7. And the other 2 are in between that. Tampa Bay is the second most expensive on the slate at 22.5. Coming in with 12.8% projected ownership, the most of any of those 4 lines. Now, I think they're in a really good spot. Buffalo's a train wreck, both at 5-on-5 and on the penalty kill. It's just a matter if you want to prioritize them in single entry. Obviously, in MME, you can spread out your exposure between the 4 of those top lines if your heart desires. In single entry, for me, they're kind of priced in between what I want to do. You know what I mean? I think for me, I'm either going to spend down for Edmonton or spend up for Colorado. I don't know if I want a full stack Tampa at 22.5. I think, one off in Kucherov is perfectly fine. 2.9 expected goals, 3.8 actual in 500 minutes this season is good, but like it's not Colorado 1 good. It's not certain Edmonton combinations good. So I think like Kucherov's an elite play here tonight. Gensel has been getting better. He had a rough start to the season, especially with shooting the puck. That has turned around a little bit. So if you do want to go Tampa 1, that's fine. I just prefer Colorado or Edmonton in single entry. Tampa 2 with Paul there is interesting. As Clayton tells me I should refresh top stacks. I will do that after I kick it to the Cliffy. I don't mind Hagel, Cirelli, Paul, just because Buffalo 1's good offensively, but they're really bad defensively. And you do get Hagel back on the top power play, I believe. So don't mind a Hagel, Cirelli 2-man, but Tampa 1, Buffalo 2, not my favorite of the high total games.
I don't really have any interest in Buffalo. There are 8 lines between 16 and 18K here. By top 2 stack percentage, I think Buffalo's top line is 4th amongst those 8 lines. And by my personal data, they're 5th. So they're not near the top. And it's like all those lines are projected for single digit ownership, and some of them, around or under 5%. Like there's just no need. So I'm just out on Buffalo. For me, this is about Tampa. Now, I do expect at some point Bjorkstrand to jump to the second line just because Nick Paul's there now. if they really wanted Nick Paul to play on the second line, he would have been on the second line in the first 60 games of the season. Like he had been at times, but obviously it's just been a straight rotation. Connor Geekie, Cam Atkinson, Nick Paul, Zemgus Girgensons, Kucherov's played there, like on and on and on. I do expect Bjorkstrand to move up there. I wrote about Bjorkstrand elsewhere this morning. Over the last 3 years, his goals per 60 minutes and primary assists per 60 minutes are in the same range as Tim Stützle, Andrei Svechnikov, and Brock Besser. The problem with Bjorkstrand is that other than last season, he had a good year on the power play. The Seattle power play has generally been atrocious, and he plays like 15 to 16 minutes. If he can get to the second line, and if he can get to the top power play unit, then he's cooking. But down on the third line, with secondary power play time, it's basically just like, what if Seattle, but with a little bit less ice time? So, no interest really in Gordon Bjorkstrand, though Bjorkstrand is, I think, a really underrated player. And if he got more ice time, it would be, I don't want to say a Brandon Hagel-like breakout, but I do think it wouldn't be very far behind. I mean that. I think he could easily be a 30-30 player year after year if he actually got some reasonable usage on a team whose power play didn't suck. But so for me, this game is about Tampa 1. That Tampa second line with Paul there, 3.1 expected goals, only 1.6 actual goals. The 1.6 actual goals shooting around 6%, which tells us, like, even if they're shooting like 10%, they're still not scoring a ton. So for me, this is Tampa 1 because they've generally been really good this year. Obviously, a little bit of a tough stretch after Christmas. Last game, they kind of broke out in a big way. The big reason is Buffalo's taking a lot of penalties. Buffalo's at 2.8 times shorthanded per game over the last 5 weeks of NHL action. So, like, not including the Four Nations break. That's 10th most in the NHL. If you go back to Christmas, they're 10th most in the NHL. And if they give Tampa Bay 3, maybe 4 power plays, Tampa's probably popping at least 1 power play goal. So I really do like Tampa 1. I agree. I think there's an expensive line elsewhere that I'd rather play, but there's no issue to playing Tampa 1 here if you want to get away from what I think is probably going to be a much chalkier Colorado team.
Yep. Columbus Blue Jackets. Our Columbus Blue Jackets. They 2.3 total. Sad times for our Jackets. Heading into Sunrise, Florida, the Panthers have a 3.8. Columbus going Fantilli, Marchenko, Voronkov, Jenner, Johnson, James Van Riemsdyk. They moved Chinnikov down with Corrali and LeBanc. They just want to get him situated after being out for so long, it seems like. Florida going Reinhart, Verhaeghe, Barkov, Bennett, Rodriguez, Samoskevich, Lundell, Lusteran, and Bachwist. Columbus side, I'm out on Columbus 1, unfortunately. On a larger slate, I am not stacking a line going against the Barkov line. It's just not how I play. It's not something that I do. The second line, Boone, Jenner, and Johnson have been very high event in their sample. At their price, like if you happen to get like 1 of 20 or a handful at 150 max, whatever, is fine. But I'm generally not running out to play Columbus here. My interest is on the Florida side. Now, Florida 1 is 21,700, and we've highlighted the issues with them a lot. This is a really good matchup. It is a good power play matchup. I think what I would do, since the top line's getting 11% projected, the second line's getting 13.4% projected, that if I am going to do some sort of Florida stack, it's going to be a power play stack. Do like Barkov, Bennett, Samoskevich, Reinhart. I wouldn't just lock in Reinhart, Verhaeghe, and Barkov and call it a day, because Verhaeghe's 7,300, not on top power play. Can he get there at even strength? Sure. But I'd rather save the salary with Bennett or Samoskevich and use that salary elsewhere, since it is such a good power play matchup. For me, it would be a Florida power play stack. If you do want to stack a line, it would be Florida 2 for me. They are coming in at 13.4% projected ownership, though. So for me, Florida power play stack.
Yeah, definitely out on Columbus 1. Nothing against the Barkov line for me. Columbus 2, I guess, is like you said. I do think at least like a 2-man of like Jenner and Kent Johnson is playable. There are like a handful of lines in that 12 to 14K range that I think are playable though, and I would play. There's a few that we'll get to that I would play above Columbus. So I'm out on the Blue Jackets. For me, like Verhaeghe's kind of like, I don't want to say he's kind of like Mikko Rantanen when he came over from Colorado, but it's that thing where he's still priced as if he's guaranteed to play 19 to 20 minutes top line, top power play. He played 13 and a half minutes in their last game, 18 minutes the game before that. If he's playing 17 to 18 minutes with secondary power play time, he shouldn't be 7,300 against anybody. So like it's one of those things where I think he's just ridiculously overpriced. So I agree with you that if I play Florida here tonight, it is some sort of power play combination. I would probably include Sam Miskevich just because he's so cheap. I mean, relatively speaking, he's only 4K. And I'd obviously probably include Barkov just because he has such a reasonable price at 6,900. Couple goals last game. Hopefully it's start of a turnaround for him. He went through a little bit of a, the whole team went through a little bit of a down stretch after Christmas. Florida has been drawing a lot of power plays. That's kind of the big thing here is that they're drawing 3.1 power plays per game over the last 5 weeks. That's second most in the league, behind only Ottawa. So the most on the slate here tonight. They're top 5 going back to Christmas. So this is another spot where they might get 3 or 4 power play opportunities. The Columbus penalty kill is not terrible. It's not good, but it's not terrible. So maybe they'll be all right if they only take a couple penalties. But if they get up to like 4 penalties or something like that, and you give this power play, plenty of opportunities, I think they're going to dice them. And the power play has been pretty good with Sam Miskevich there. 140 shot attempts per 60 minutes at 5-on-4 with Sam Miskevich on the top power play. That is a lot of shooting. So I do like doing like a Barkov, Reinhart, Sam Miskevich, Barkov, Sam Miskevich, Bennett, like you said, something like that. I do think that's kind of the direction I would go in. For me, this game is about the Florida power play guys. It's just about whether you want to play all 5 of them or just some combination of them.
Yeah, and I know Seth Jones didn't practice on the top power play unit, but I think it's coming at some point. So, Utah, Zisolkas. They haven't played in a while. They 3.1 total. Heading into Detroit, the Red Wings have a 2.8 total. Utah going Keller, Cooley, Schmaltz, Genther, Hayton, Kerfoot. Why? When we can have Michelli there, but we can put him on the 4th line. They should just trade him. Detroit going DeBrincat, Kane, Comfort, Larkin, Raymond, Soderblom. He is a very large mammal if you've never seen him play. He's 6'8" without the skates, like 18 foot, 6'3" with the skates. Not sure he belongs on the top line, especially with Casper being up there. That was a very good line. Neither here nor there. I'll start on the Detroit side. This is a rough 5-on-5 matchup. Utah is a good 5-on-5 team, and especially when they have their defensemen healthy, which they do. The issue is it's a good power play matchup, and the Red Wings are power play merchants. So I don't think I'm going to get to them in single entry. I haven't built yet, so I might. But if I'm doing anything with Detroit here tonight, it is undoubtedly being a power play stack, whether it's like Larkin, Raymond, Kane, Larkin, Raymond, DeBrincat, even just straight up like Larkin, Kane, DeBrincat. I do some sort of power play stack. You could 5-man power play stack them in MME if your heart is sizzling for a good time. So like it would be some sort of power play stack for me from the wing side. I don't know if I'm going to get there in single entry because it's not a good 5-on-5 matchup, but they are power play merchants, and this is a good power play spot. The Utah side is interesting because there's not a ton of ownership here, and the Wings are bad. Like, I don't know if you've noticed. They are not good defensively. Has anyone noticed?
Yes.
They're really bad, both at 5-on-5 and on the penalty kill. I can't imagine Elmer Soderblom moving up to the top line being good defensively for them. Like Casper kept them around league average. The second line is god-awful defensively. So I think there's two playable lines here for Utah. Like, it's a good 5-on-5 matchup. It's also a good power play matchup. That's why I kind of want a power play stack Utah side as well. And I think I'd lean to Hayton Genther and add in a Keller or Schmaltz. If you want to just straight up, if you want to just 5-on-5 stack a line, it would be Utah 1. But for me, I like the power play matchup. I want Genther in there. I would do Hayton and Genther and then add in one of Keller or Schmaltz, probably Keller, depending on your salary tolerance, and go from there. I think both Utah 1 and Utah 2 are fine on their own, but I would prefer power play stacking on both sides.
I agree with the Detroit side that, like Florida, I would focus on the power play guys. Obviously, Detroit's power play has been great since McClellan took over. Utah penalty kills, nothing to write home about. Utah has been taking fewer penalties. That's something that is important. This was a team, like in the first 40-ish games of the season, 35-ish games, took a lot of penalties. Since Christmas, sixth fewest penalties in the league. Over the last 5 weeks, fourth fewest. So maybe Detroit only gets a couple chances here tonight. And here's the problem, but here's the general problem I have with playing Detroit. I don't mind playing Detroit for a power play stack when it's in a good spot. This spot's fine. The problem is like if you play Larkin, Raymond, and DeBrincat, let's say, that line combination would be about 19,300. For an extra $300, you can go play Edmonton at home against Montreal. Or you can pay an extra $1,000 in Winnipeg playing against Philadelphia. So the thing is I don't mind this spot for a power play stack of some sort in general. It's just once you take off Soderblom and add in another 6,300 or 6,500 winger or whatever, all of a sudden they're in the Edmonton Winnipeg range. And at that point, I'd rather play, at Edmonton or Winnipeg. So honestly, I'm out on Detroit. For me, I'm more in on Utah. This is a really good power play matchup for Utah. The problem is Detroit doesn't take penalties. I talked about how Utah wasn't taking much. By far, Detroit is the least penalized team in the league. They've only given up 32 power plays, 32 power plays over the last 18 games. 50 power plays over the last 27. So well under 2 power plays per game. That's not great. If you only get one power play, you really have to make hay. The thing is, it's kind of like the New York Islanders over the last couple of years where they don't take very many penalties. When they do, they absolutely suck at killing them off. And generally speaking, Utah's power play has been good this year. And, once you get, I do think taking Marco Kasper off that top line is going to make the top line worse defensively. So this is actually a spot where I don't mind. Normally I would probably dip down to the cheaper Genther, Hayton, Kerfoot line. But now that they're using Elmer Soderblom for some reason that's really unbeknownst to me, I honestly don't mind going to Keller, Cooley, Schmaltz. Now, if you want to go to Genther, Hayton, Kerfoot, because you need a cheap-ish line, you need a sub 14K line, that's perfectly fine. That Utah, Hayton and Genther, without Clayton Keller on their line this year, 70 shot attempts, 2.7 expected goals per 60. Those two guys are playing 18 to 19 minutes on the top power play together. Barrett Hayton almost 3 shots per game over his last 10 games. We know how good Dylan Genther has been. I have no issue playing Utah too. I just think that with Kasper down on the third line now, it's going to make the top line worse defensively. So I have no problem going to Utah 1. 2.8 expected goals with Logan Cooley on the top line since Christmas. Nick Schmaltz is averaging 2 shots a game over his last 15 games. This is a guy that doesn't typically shoot a ton. If he's anywhere around 2 shots per game, I think that's perfectly fine. I think my favorite line is Utah 1. I honestly don't mind going down to Utah 2 if you need a cheaper line to put in with a more expensive stack elsewhere.
Just to circle back and on something. You said Bjorkstrand was kind of like Verhaeghe. I think he's kind of like Clayton Keller if, because Clayton Keller gets 20 minutes. If Bjorkstrand got 20 minutes a night, he'd probably put up similar numbers.
Yes.
If he got power play time.
Yeah, I don't think he's as good of a playmaker. It's one of those things like I think he'd be a better goal scorer, but a worse playmaker than Keller. That's why I kind of think I honestly think he's like Brock Besser.
That's fair as well. Winnipeg Jets 2.9 total heading into Philadelphia. Low key sucks. 2.6 total for the Flyers. Big news here is it's Eric Comrie in net, not Connor Hellebuyck. Winnipeg going Connor, Scheifele, Velarde, Ehlers, Perfidi, Nemestikov, Niederreiter, Lowry, Appleton. Flyers going Konechny, Kuzmenko, Lawton, Tippett, Mitchkov, Couturier, Cates, Forster, Brink. Normally, I'd be like, I don't really have too much interest here in the Flyers because they're facing Hellebuyck. It is Comrie. Comrie has been a very, very good backup. The problem is, the Flyers are so cheap here. So you have to at least consider them. Konechny, Kuzmenko, Lawton, 14,200. I think last week when Kuzmenko was 6,700, this line was almost 19K. Tippett, Mitchkov, Couturier, 12.6. Cates, Forster, Brink, 10.8. They were 16K last week. So I don't really want to play Forster, Cates, Brink, but it's one of those things at 10.8. It's fine because even if they're not going to shoot 80% like they did a few nights ago, they get one full line goal with shots and blocks. You're just, you're hooting and hollering, as they say. So, I don't mind them as a filler. I also like Tippett, Mitchkov, Couturier. They've just played well together. And Mitchkov is only 4,500, and he is on the top power play. I think he's fine as a one-off. I think that line is fine. Even Lawton, Konechny, Kuzmenko is fine. 6,700 Kuzmenko is a circus price. 5,000 Kuzmenko is still a little bit overpriced, but it's okay. If he scores a goal and has 3 shots, you kind of can be whew, you can exhale a little bit. So I don't mind Philadelphia here. I don't love them, but just because they're priced so cheap against not Hellebuyck, you have to consider them. On the Jets side, I know Winnipeg 1 is up over 20,000 here, but the Flyers penalty kill sucks. Urson got yanked after 5 shots on goal the other night. He's back in. But if Detroit's power play merchant, Winnipeg 1 is fairly power play merchanty. They're a better 5-on-5 line, but they do live on the power play as well. This isn't, I think, of the spend up options outside of the big 4 totals. This is a pretty sneaky spot. 2.5% projected ownership. Again, really good power play spot. One of the higher road totals on the night at 2.9, second to only Utah, who we just talked about. So I kind of like Winnipeg 1 here. I think there's sneaky pivot off those big 4 guys. That would reserve it for MME for me. You can do it in single entry. It's just so hard for me to fade all 4 of the other lines with massive totals. Winnipeg has a 2.9, but again, I think they're a nice pivot off those 4. Winnipeg 2 at 14-2, they're fine, but I'd rather just go play Lawton, Konechny, Kuzmenko at that point. So Winnipeg 1, there's playable lines on Philly just because of their price.
Yeah, I agree. I don't mind Winnipeg 1 at all here tonight. And like I said, I would rather play them than some sort of Detroit stack. We'll talk about Boston in a second. I'd rather play them than Boston. But and honestly, I'd probably rather play them than Florida just because Verhaeghe's no longer on the top power play unit. But I'd definitely rather play Colorado, rather play Tampa Bay. Talk about Carolina. Maybe Rantanen's traded, but I think I'd still rather play Carolina. So they're just not my favorite. It's one of those things if I was 20 maxing, maybe I have 1. If I was 150, maybe I have 3 or 4 or something like that. But in a single entry, I just think there are other spots I'd rather go to. Winnipeg 2 is kind of interesting. What bothers me is they're basically priced in a in that Philadelphia range of around 14K. Philadelphia's connecting line anyway. So like there are a couple other spots I'd rather play, but Winnipeg, like that Winnipeg second line since Christmas, 65 shot attempts, 3.3 expected goals for per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. That's really good. They're only about league average by goal scoring because they're only shooting like 7.5%. But like if they can get up to like 9.5%, they'd be a really good scoring line. Ehlers is on the top power play. Like I do think there are reasons to play them, but again, I think it's more MME for me. Like so that's why like I don't mind Winnipeg here, but I think it's only a case where if I'm playing a bunch of lineups in a single entry, I don't think I'm going to get there. For me, it's more about the Flyers side. Like, you know, we do slam the Flyers a lot and the DK's pricing of them all the time. But like you said, Konechny, Kuzmenko, Lawton, 14,200. And like those guys are getting ice time, right? Lawton and Konechny are like 19 to 20 minutes. Kuzmenko's like 17, 18 minutes. Most nights. So this is a perfectly correlated line at home facing a backup goalie where all the forwards are probably, I mean, I say probably, it's still John Tortorella. Like these guys could be given fourth line minutes on any given night. That's just kind of the way that he works. But we'll probably get 17 to 20 minutes each with Lawton and Konechny at the high end of that. And they're 14,200 with 2.5% ownership. Like, I do think that there are reasons to play Philly here. That's a lot of minutes for a perfectly correlated top line at home at a reasonable price. And if you don't want to play them, like, yes, Cates, Forster, Brink are in play. If you're playing Tampa Bay or Colorado or whatever, and you need a super cheap stack, but if you don't really need them, like Tippett, Michkov, Couturier have been good together since they got put together. Like obviously, it's not a big sample with those guys just yet. But Michkov, Couturier, and Tippett, 3.5 expected goals per 60, 66 shot attempts per 60, 40 shots per 60 in almost 75 minutes together. Like they've been really good. So like if you need a filler stack, like I think Tippett, Michkov, Couturier, or just, you know, if you need a one-off Michkov, something like that. The problem with Philly had always been, you know, paying $6,600 for Kuzmenko or whatever. Now that these guys have come down in price and are a lot more reasonable, like Konechny at $5,400, we have to realize how cheap this is. There was a time this guy was in like the mid 7K range this season. So I do think that there are at least one-offs to consider here, if not full-on stacks. I don't like the Flyers particularly. I do like the prices on the Flyers.
Yeah. Scrolling Twitter looking for some late line combinations in the late games. Your boy Jakub Vrana got claimed by the Preds. Let him cook there since they, for some reason, traded Novak for someone older and more expensive.
Let him cook with who? They got rid of Nyquist. They got rid of Novak. They got rid of Tomasino. They're going to trade Ryan O'Reilly. It's like, what? Could you imagine what a line with Stamkos on one wing and Vrana on the other would look like? Oh my God.
It's like looking in the rearview mirror, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, maybe he'll get a chance to play because they only have like 17 healthy bodies. Boston Bruins with a 2.1 total. I had to double check to make sure that was correct. Heading into Carolina, the Hurricanes have a 3.5 total. Carolina going Rantanen, Aho, Jarvis, Svechnikov, Stahl, Martinuk, Hall, Blake, Kotkaniemi. Boston going Pasternak, Geeky, Zaka, Lindholm, Coyle, Riley, Tuft. Basically, I'm out on Boston. If you want to play a Pasternak one-off because it's David Pasternak, good for you. Other than that, I'm out on Boston. Carolina side is pretty interesting here. Like Rantanen, Aho, and Jarvis have played well together. Like it's not a surprise that these guys have played well together. It's just, again, Mikko Rantanen's having trouble finishing. Maybe he's, you know, the trade deadline's probably affecting him, that he might have to go from Colorado to Carolina to somewhere else. I don't know. They're 21,300. This is a pretty good matchup. Like getting middle six of matchups of Boston right now, you know, Lindholm has been pretty good defensively this season, but with Coyle and who with Marchand out, like, I don't know, man. Like, I like Carolina 1 here. Just a matter if you want to play them over Florida, over Colorado, over Edmonton, over Tampa, etc. They're obviously in that mix. The Carolina is more of an MME play for me, at least the top line. The second line of Svechnikov, Stahl, Martinook is interesting. Like, they've been good. They haven't been good like Jarvis, Stahl, Martinook. So I think if I'm going to drop down, it would be to Kotkaniemi, Blake, and Hall. They have been pretty good in a small-ish sample. I maybe like two-man Blake and Hall if you need, a cheap two-man for your more expensive stuff. But really, my favorite line in this game is Carolina 1. And if you want a one-off Pasternak, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just out on Boston. On the Carolina side, like, I think that the problem that you hit on is the right one. Is like $1,200 more, you can go play Tampa. I mean, at a certain point, Colorado's $2,400 more. Like, that's a lot more expensive. I get that. Like, if you don't want to pay all the way up for Colorado, you want something a little bit more reasonable. Like, I would rather play Carolina than Florida 1. I'd rather play Carolina than Winnipeg 1. I would still rather play Tampa Bay. I would find the money to go play them, but I think Carolina is just right behind them. Like, that top line, I mean, just Aho and Rantanen, 3.5 expected goals per 60, 1.9 actual goals per 60. Like, Carolina typically doesn't shoot for high shooting percentages anyway, but even 6% shooting or whatever is really pushing the lower end of the limit. The Carolina power play is shooting 6% with Mikko Rantanen in there. Like, there is just a lot of genuine bad, like a little bit of bad luck going on there. Boston's just not a good team. Like, I you know what I mean? Like, honestly, are they worse than Montreal at this point?
They might be, honestly.
They honestly might be. Like, their expected goals against at 5-on-5 over the last 5 weeks is basically the middle of the league. If you look at all strengths, they're 21st by expected goals against. Like, this is not a good team. So Carolina 1's not my favorite of the expensive lines, but they're also not my least favorite or even my second least favorite. So I don't, if you really do want to pivot and go for a really low owned Carolina instead of playing what is going to be a higher owned Colorado or higher owned Tampa Bay, I think it's fine. I would probably still rather play Tampa Bay or something like that, but do what you want. The Carolina line, the Stahl line with Svechnikov has generally been pretty good this year. Like, they were really good with Jarvis as well. Like, I think moving Jarvis up is more about getting that line going than it is anything to do with what he was playing like with Stahl and Martinook. But the Svechnikov line was there's a Stahl line with Svechnikov, 80 shot attempts, 3 expected goals, 4.2 actual goals per 60. Still pretty good. And the thing is, they're going to go up against that Boston top line. The Boston top line has just not been good defensively this year. So I think it's a really good 5-on-5 matchup for them. Now, they've switched up the power play lines. So Svechnikov's no longer technically on the top power play. But I honestly think that the way that they have them now with Svechnikov, Jarvis, and Brent Burns on power play 2, that they're basically going to split power play time. So, you get a little bit of power play time. That's the one thing that worries me about not playing anybody is playing the Stahl line is like you only get Svechnikov on the power play, and this is actually a pretty good power play spot. That's why I think I kind of agree with you. I might go to Kotkaniemi, Blake, and Hall instead. Like, they're really cheap, 10,600. Hall and Kotkaniemi are on power play 2. Blake's on power play 1. So it's not perfect correlation, but all 3 guys are on the power play and 2 out of the 3 on the second unit. So I think Hall, Blake, and Kotkaniemi make a very, very fine filler stack here. If you want to pay up for the Svechnikov line, I think it's fine. But I agree with you. I think I'd rather play the Kotkaniemi line, and Carolina 1 is a fine pivot from the chalkier Tampa Bay, Colorado spots.
Seattle Kraken with a 2.7 total heading into Nashville. The Predators have a 2.9. We have landed, my friends. This game sucks. It took a trade for Eberle to get moved up the lineup, and now he's saddled with Chandler Stevenson. Cool. Seattle going Beniers, Schwartz, Kako, McCann, Wright, Burakovsky, Stevenson, Tolvin, and Eberle. Nashville going Forsberg, Marchessault, Colton Sissons, Steven Stamkos, Ryan O'Reilly, Luke Evangelista. I mean, like, if you're playing MME, I have no issue with either of the two Nashville lines. Do I love them? No. Do I want to play them in single entry? No. But if I was making a bunch of lineups, they're in that mid-price range at home against Seattle with not a ton of ownership. That, yeah, I'd have a little bit. They're not my favorite. You can do worse. I'm mum on them. On the Seattle side, I think there's I guess technically there's 3 playable lines, but at 13,200, I don't mind Beniers, Schwartz, Kako here. Like, Nashville is a mess. They don't have, I think they only have 20 healthy bodies. So, like, I saw Zach, our boy Zach L''H, which, if you know my brain, that just trips me automatically, is going to be back in the lineup here tonight. I don't mind Beniers, Schwartz, Kako. Their offensive numbers have slowed down a little bit, but they get minutes. And now that they traded Gordon Bjorkstrand, like, they're probably still going to get minutes. McCann, Wright, and Burakovsky maybe get more minutes, than they have been, which is enticing because that line has played well and they're 12,900. There's no matchup concern. So, like, there's 2 lines on Seattle that I would consider as fillers. If you want to play the Chandler Stevenson line for 11-2 because they're cheap, like, that's not something I'm interested in doing, but it's fine. If you want to do it, Nashville 1-2 in MME, if they get into your, optimizer, fine. I don't mind Seattle 1-2. Like, honestly, if this game wasn't on the slate, I wouldn't shed a tear.
Yeah, I think Seattle does have 2 playable lines here. Just personally, I think I would go with McCann, Wright, and Burakovsky just because they have been pretty good offensively, as you mentioned. That Shane Wright line with Burakovsky and McCann next to him, 68 shot attempts, 3.1 expected goals, 4.7 actual goals, shooting 13.3%. But again, if they're shooting like 10%, they'd still be a really, really good line of 5-on-5. I do wonder about ice time. Like, is it possible that Yanni Gordon and Oliver Bjorkstrand get traded and they still don't get more ice time? Like, do they just allocate, like, is it like, here you go, 23 minutes a night for Chandler Stevenson? Like, honestly, at this point, nothing would surprise me. I hope that they get more minutes because they have been really good. Like, Jared McCann, like, since Burakovsky got moved there, that Jared McCann looks like the guy that he's basically been for most of the last 3 or 4 years. He has 31 shots in his last 10 games. Seattle power play being what it is, i.e. not very good, not super concerned about power play correlation, but Burakovsky and Wright on the same power play unit. For a cheap filler stack, I don't mind McCann, Wright, Burakovsky. Like, if you want to play them like with Edmonton or like a Detroit power play stack or Winnipeg or something like that, I think that's perfectly fine. Like, Nashville's bad. Nashville is a bad, bad, bad team. Like, I do think that Nashville's better offensively, but that also doesn't preclude Nashville being dog shit defensively. So I do not mind that McCann, Wright, Burakovsky line here. On the Nashville side, I don't want to go too long into this. I mentioned this over on Blue Sky. Over the last 9 months, Nashville has traded Ryan McDonough, Tommy Novak, and Alex Carrier for a 2nd round, a 7th round pick, Michael Bunting, and Justin Barron. They gave away Dante Fabro and Philip Tomasino, and they signed Stamkos and Brady Shea to 2 of the 10 worst contracts in the NHL. Is that the worst year for a GM in recent NHL history?
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to think of a GM that absolutely nuked a team from being a potential top 5, top 6 team in their conference to literally a lottery pick in through nothing other than roster management. I'm trying to think of another GM that did that, and one has not come to mind. Like, if there were some really bad Leafs GMs and Edmonton GMs, but those things generally happened over like 2 or 3 years. This 9-month stretch from Barry Trotz, if you told me he was like a sleeper agent sent by the Dallas Stars to torpedo the Nashville Predators organization, I would at least have to give it a little bit of thought as to whether that might be true. This is honest. It's honestly embarrassing. It's one of those things where, like, if the owner had any idea how bad of a job the GM was doing, he would have been fired months ago. Anyways, don't really have interest in playing Stamkos, O'Reilly, Evangelista. My interest would be in Forsberg, Marchessault, and Sissons. Now, top line Colton Sissons is always an interesting thing, but Sissons and Jonathan Marchessault haven't really played that well together, but Marchessault and Forsberg, almost regardless of who they play with, have been able to generate well enough offensively. 16,800 is a pretty reasonable price for them, coming in with a higher top 2 stack than ownership. But I'm going to be honest with you. I think when it comes to Nashville, I'm almost treating it sort of like Philadelphia, where I like the prices, I don't like the stacks, and I'd be more interested in like Evangelista one-off, Marchessault one-off, certainly a Forsberg one-off than I would be full stacking anything. So I honestly think that McCann is my favorite line in this game. Nashville side, I do think there are one-offs to consider. Full stacking, I'm out.
Yeah. Calgary Flames, 2.5 total. Heading into Dallas, the Stars have a 3.5. Dallas going Robertson, Hintz, Granlund, Wyatt Johnston, Ben Dadonov, Duchesne, Marchment, Maverick, Bork. Calgary going Kadri, Huberdeau, Coronado, Coleman, Backlund, Farabee, Frost, Sharangovich, Pospisil. I don't like these Calgary lines at all. Going into Dallas, even without Heiskanen, not a fun time. I am out on Calgary. If you want to play Backlund, Coleman, Farabee because they're 10-7, like fine. But I really don't have interest in Calgary. My interest is on the Dallas side, and it looks like it's going to be our boy Danny V in net, not Dustin Wolf. And like these Calgary line configurations, they're all bad defensively. And the Calgary penalty kill sucks. And there's no more and. I just wanted to see how long I could go doing that.
No, and Dan Vladar starting.
Yeah. And none of the Dallas lines are fully correlated, which kind of sucks. But like Robertson Hintz with Granlund is very interesting because it's only 17-8. The other night there with Logan Stankoven, they were like 17-3 or something like that. And Stankoven didn't really do anything. He got moved down in the fourth line. Like eventually he's going to turn into a very good player. I think, Granlund suits this line a lot better offensively now. Now they're not fully correlated, which kind of sucks. So if you want to leave off Granlund and add in like Wyatt Johnston or Matt Duchesne to make it an expensive power play stack, I honestly think that's very viable on this slate. Calgary is not a good team. These lines are horrific defensively. Their penalty kill sucks. Danny V sucks. So I very much like a Dallas power play stack here. If you don't want to go super expensive, I'm fine with the Robertson, Hintz, Granlund line. I'm fine with Johnson and Ben 2-man. I'm fine with Duchesne and Marchman 2-man. But, it's not that much more expensive adding in Duchesne than Granlund. It's $800 more. It is $1,700 more to add Wyatt Johnston to that stack instead of Granlund. That makes it $19,500. I know the Oilers are right there, but this Calgary team is bad. So, like, I honestly don't even mind Robertson, Hintz, Johnson here.
Yeah, I will say I don't have a ton of interest. I do have a little bit of interest in Kadri, Hubert, or Coronado. One, like the Dallas penalty kill without Miro Heiskanen is honestly just not the same, right? Like, for all the slagging we do of Heiskanen and how Harley should have been on the top power play, like Heiskanen's obviously still one of the best defensemen in the NHL. If you look at Dallas's penalty kill over their last 10 games, the numbers are sliding a little bit. Shot attempts against per 60 are 12th in the league. Shots against per 60 are 13th in the league. Expected goals against, much worse. the goaltending has saved them, but the penalty kill is getting worse without Heiskanen. That's important because the Dallas penalty kill until Heiskanen got hurt was top 3 in the league, if not the best, depending on what metric you looked at. And Coronado being back on the top line with Kadri and Huberdeau makes that a perfectly correlated top line. So that is a perfectly correlated top line at 14,600 facing a penalty kill that's getting worse. It's kind of like that Philadelphia thing earlier. It's like I'm not particularly in love with the matchup or the line necessarily, but if you give me a perfectly correlated line where all the guys are going to play 17 to 20 minutes for 14,600, I do have to give them some consideration. So I would honestly probably rather play Calgary than play Philadelphia here tonight, at least those respective top lines. And, as bad as the Calgary top line has been defensively, 74 was Coronado there, 74 shot attempts, 2.9 expected goals. That's actually not that bad for Calgary. It's actually good for Calgary, especially the expected goals. So I don't mind Calgary 1 here, honestly. It's more just because they are now perfectly correlated at 14,600. Like if it was almost anybody else, like even if it was like Coleman or Zari or something on the top line, I would be out. But it's a perfectly correlated top line. With all that said, my interest is on the Dallas side. The Dallas power play. The Dallas power play has just been absolutely unbelievable. They're scoring 17.7 goals per 60 minutes on the power play with Thomas Harley there. Now, it should be said that that's while shooting 27.5%. If they were shooting about 18%, they would still be scoring nearly 12 goals per 60 minutes, which is like Tampa Bay, like Edmonton territory. Like this is now an elite. This is the top power play that Dallas had basically when Joe Pavelski was there. Now that Thomas Harley is running things, I have no problem going just full on power play stack. Robertson, Hintz, Johnston, Duchesne. If you want to leave off like the one guy I wouldn't leave off a power play stack is probably Johnston because I do think he's going to lead them in ice time again. So Robertson, Hintz, Johnston, if you just want to do that. But this is a really good spot. Calgary over the last 5 weeks, the most time shorthanded per game in the league at 3.3. Going back to Christmas, 4th most time shorthanded per game, and only one of 4 teams going to the penalty box at least 3 times a game. This is a really good power play spot for Dallas. So I like a Dallas power play stack here the best, but I'm not going to just preclude not playing Calgary because, like I said, anytime you get a perfectly correlated top line that's going to get 17 to 20 minutes, I do think you have to consider them.
Montreal Canadiens with a 2.6 total. Heading into Edmonton, the Oilers have a 3.9. The Oilers got whacked by the Ducks the other night, like 6-1 or whatever. Matthias Ekholm is out. That's of note defensively. Edmonton going McDavid, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins, Draisaitl, Arvidsson, Podkolzin. Don't know why they ever broke that line up. Neither here nor there. Montreal going Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, Line, Newhook, Beck, Gallagher, Dvorak, Anderson. Now, starting on the Montreal side, yes, the Montreal top line is overpriced at 17,900. But I don't know if you've watched the Oilers play since the Four Nations break. It has been ugly. And Ekholm being out is a big deal. He is by far their best defensive defenseman. Klingberg's out too. That might actually help them defensively, but hurt them a little bit offensively. Ekholm by far their worst or their best defensive defenseman. I don't mind Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky here. Now, I'm not running out to play them by any means. 17,900 is tough pill to swallow, considering Dallas 1 is less expensive. Like, if I'm playing 150, I'm getting over the field on the 1% projected ownership. Like, this is a good line. They are, at least offensively. I would want some exposure to Montreal 1 in MME. You want a one-off line A because he plays in Ovi's office on the power play, sure. But this is an Edmonton game. Now, normally I'm just like, let's play the power play guys and call it a day. And that's generally what I'll probably be doing if I play Edmonton here tonight. But I will mention that Draisaitl, Arvidsson, Podkolzin have been excellent together this season. They're going to get middle to bottom 6 matchups in Montreal. Dvorak, Anderson, Gallagher are fine defensively, but all the other lines on Montreal are putrid. If you cannot get up to like McDavid, Hyman, Draisaitl, something like that, I have no issue playing pieces of Edmonton too, going something like McDavid, Draisaitl, Podkolzin, Draisaitl, Hyman, Podkolzin. Like, you can just go McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, McDavid, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins at 19-6 is definitely very playable. I'm just, if you're looking to just do something a little bit different, I think, that second line has been very, very good this season, but generally just focus on the power play guys.
Yeah. I think Montreal is kind of fine to play here tonight. I think the problem, as you mentioned, is like Dallas 1 is right there. I'd rather play Dallas, and like Utah is even a little bit cheaper, and I think I'd rather play Utah top line here tonight. So, I'd definitely rather play Montreal than either of the Nashville lines. I'd rather play them than Buffalo, but I would still rather play Dallas over Montreal. I'd still rather play Utah over Montreal. So like, that's just kind of the problem. So I think I'm more or less out on the Habs here tonight. Here's an interesting thing about Montreal is that their quote second line is basically their fourth line. If you look at the 4 games since Kirby Dach got hurt, Patrick Laine's the lowest amount of even strength ice time per game. Owen Beck, second lowest amount of even strength ice time per game. So like, even like the quote fourth line of like Armia, Evans, and Heineman is kind of basically like a pseudo second/third line now. Just keep that in mind if you're looking for cheap players here tonight. But yeah, obviously the interest is on the Edmonton side. Like, listen, I get that the Oilers have looked bad. I would also say that Edmonton is shooting 5.7% at even strength with McDavid on the ice over his last 20 games. They're not going to keep shooting 5.7% with McDavid on the ice. So like, once that turns around, they're going to fill the net. I agree with you. I think this is a good spot for a power play stack. Montreal is taking fewer penalties, but still above the league average. The penalty kill is fine, but not elite. The Edmonton power play is still really good. I would absolutely make sure I include Draisaitl in the stack, but like, if you want to do like a Hyman Draisaitl or like just Draisaitl plus Bouchard, McDavid, Hyman Draisaitl, like something like that, I think that's perfectly fine. Edmonton 1 very much in play here, but I think it's just the Edmonton power play guys I like in this game.
San Jose Sharks with a 2.2 total heading into Colorado. The Avs have a 3.9. I went looking for Sharks lines. I couldn't find them. Maybe I missed them, but they did win the other night with them, so they're probably going to stay the same. It is Celebrini, Smith, Zetterlund, Toffoli, Eklund, Wenberg. Colorado going McKinnon, Nets, Lehkonen, Nichushkin, Drew, and Middlestat. Now, like, the Sharks have a 2.2 total, and I don't really want to play them here. But I will say, I've noticed, I think it was a Cliffy stat that he put on one of the social media stats. I'll give you the credit because it probably was yours. I'll probably butcher it and then you'll correct me. But since they traded Gramlin, I think they're top 5 in the NHL by expected goal share.
Third.
Yeah. See, I told you I'd mess it up. But yeah, that's kind of crazy considering how bad this team is. But like, giving Will Smith minutes with actual line mates actually works. Imagine that. So like, it's one of those things. It's kind of like the Flyers. It's kind of like the Flames. Like, do I love the matchup? No. But Wenberg, Toffoli, Eklund at 13.5 is at least intriguing. Celebrini, Smith, and Zetterlund at 15.3. It's a little pricey, but you are getting Macklin, Celebrini. I don't mind it. Celebrini and Smith have played pretty decent together this season. So like, I'm not running out to play the Sharks, but again, like Cliffy said with Calgary or Philly, like, you just shouldn't throw them on the wayside. Obviously, this is a Colorado 1 game. Colorado won the most expensive line on the board at 23,700. They're only coming in with 8.6% projected ownership. Now, you have to make the choice, obviously, if you're spending up, what line you want to spend up for. I think my favorite is Colorado 1. It is an elite 5-on-5 spot. It's an elite power play spot. It's just a matter of like what you want to do. If you want to save some salary, I guess you could leave off Lehkonen and add in Drouin. Every time I do that, Lehkonen scores 7 goals. But like, I don't know, like if you're worried about the price, there's some salary savers. What I've been doing recently is going like McKinnon, not just Makar, which is even more expensive, but the ownership's 8.6% projected. I'm just going to just straight up stack Colorado 1. If you want to do something with Drouin or Makar, that's for you to figure out. So Colorado 1 for me. Sharks lines are interesting. And I think because of the price, I'd lean Wenberg to Foley Eklund because they're kind of a filler line.
Yeah. I do kind of like San Jose here in a nutshell. It kind of sucks that Josh Manson's coming back tonight because that Manson-Sam Girard pair has actually been pretty good. Like, if Manson wasn't playing, you'd have Oliver Shillington playing with Girard, and then you'd have like Ryan Lindgren on the third pair. All of a sudden, like both pairs would be like average to really bad in Lindgren's case. Now with Manson back, it kind of gives him 2 good defense pairs. It cools me a little bit off of San Jose, but like, you know, Toffoli and Eklund in their minutes together without Macklin Celebrini, so like with Granlund or with Wenberg or whichever center, 68 shot attempts, 3.2 expected goals, 3.6 actual goals in 135 minutes. Those are really, really good offensive numbers. 13,500 with Wenberg on the line. Honestly, they should probably be. I really do wish they were cheaper because at 13,500, they're the same price as like the Utah second line. They're the same price as like the Stahl line from Carolina. You know, there's a couple Philly lines in that price range. So like there are other spots I go to, but it's one of those nights I wish I was playing 150 because I think this San Jose is not in as bad of a spot as it looks. But yeah, this is a Colorado game. Colorado, the top 2 stack percentage on the night. They have the highest total projection on the night. San Jose taking a lot of penalties, 3.1 times shorthanded per game over the last 5 weeks, tied for 3rd most in the league. You know, going back to Christmas, they're top 10 or they're about middle of the league by this regard. Like if they take a lot of penalties against Colorado, they'll be in trouble. That Colorado top line is at 4.1 expected actual goals per 60, shooting under 10%. Like that's just absolutely insane how many shots you're generating. So Colorado 1 is the top line of the night. It's just whether or not you want to pay $23,700 for them.
Yep. Still scrolling through Twitter looking for lines, didn't see it, but Colton Parayko out for 6 weeks, knee surgery. That sucks. They could use Scott Perunovich. But anyway, let's talk about some defensemen here at the top of the board. We have Makar, Werenski, Bouchard, Morrissey, Harley. Honestly, like they're all playable. I think I go Makar 1, Bouchard 2. I don't know. I think maybe Harley 2, Bouchard 3, but I think in that top range, depending on who you're playing, they're all pretty playable. Spending up for Makar with Colorado 1 is a chore in itself, but like I think Makar is the best player on the board here tonight.
Yeah, there are a lot of defensemen with good values. Like Werenski's the top projected defenseman here, and he's a fair bit ahead of Werenski, but he's also $1,000 more expensive, so the point per dollar value is really close. Also Bouchard, because he's only 6,500, he's really close to them as well. You know, Victor Hedman is an even better value because he's under 6K. So like there are a lot of like defensemen over 5,500 like worth playing here tonight. Mackenzie Weegar is even fine. Like Thomas Harley, like the only one I really wouldn't have a ton of interest in is Rasmus Dahlin. Like other than that, like I'd have no problem playing any of the 6 of them. My order by value is Werenski, then Makar, then Bouchard, then Harley. But honestly, like I said, I think there's 5 or 6 guys that are very playable. Shout out Jake Wallman. You know, he gets involved offensively, likes to shoot, likes to block shots. I don't mind his price. Brady Shea, Seth Jones, perfectly fine. Vince Dunn from Seattle. Mikhail Sergachev, again, it's as long as Utah can get 2 or 3 power play opportunities, I think he stands a good chance of having a good night, and he's under 5K, so I like that price. Darren Radish, he's off the top power play. I do worry about ice time, but that second power play unit I do think gets a little bit of run. The couple Nashville guys, Nick Blankenburg, Michael Delgado, Travis Sanheim, he's under 4K. I think he's fine. Dante Fabro is projecting extremely well. Nick Blankenburg and Brandon Carlo from Nashville and Boston, respectively, I think are very much in play. And I'll shout out Matt Dumba getting some secondary power play time for Dallas.
Let's talk about those freak shows in between the pipes. The top range is a little bit rough. It's just like they're expensive, and I don't particularly love them. If I was spending up above 8K, I think it would be for Vasilevsky. Like Blackwood at 8,600. If you live on Narrative Street, he's facing his old team, like I guess for cash games, but I think spending up, it would be Vasilevsky. Vejmelka at 7,600 is fine. I think Saros at 7,900 is kind of a little bit scary, makes him a GPP play, but there's not much in front of him. He would have to stand on his head, which is possible. Don't mind Joey Decord, 7,500. Spending down is a really scary proposition here. Do you go back to Urson at 7,400? Do you go to Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen? That's scary. Korpisalo against Carolina, I guess maybe. Montembeault at 7,100 would probably be the guy I'd go if I was going under Decord at 7,500. But none of these guys under Decord really are fun.
Yeah, Jake Ottinger's my number one at home against Dallas. The top projected goalie is Sergei Bobrovsky. I don't mind playing Bob here tonight. It's a really tough matchup for Columbus. Kochetkov is tied with him for point per dollar value. I would not play Kochetkov. That's one guy that terrifies me to ever play. So I think, Ottinger, Bobrovsky. I also don't mind UC Saros, like you said, at 7,900. I don't mind either goalie in that game. I like Decord either, so I think that's fine. I do have a little bit of concern about playing Joonas Korpisalo from Boston here tonight, but it's still Carolina, and Carolina is really struggling to convert shots into goals. If that lasts one more night, then Korpisalo could have a really good night. And I will shout out Elvis Merzlikins. It's a tough matchup against Florida, but Florida has had a lot of tough time scoring themselves. So if you need a true punt goalie, I think Merzlikins is probably the guy.
We will be back tomorrow for trade deadline day. I'm sure there'll be trades coming through while we're on the show. Could be fun. Could be a little chaotic, but we will be here. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
Why not? Oliver Bjorkstrand.
I'll just go off the board too. One of his former teammates, Jared McCann.
I like it.
We will see you guys tomorrow for trade deadline day. Good luck, everybody, tonight. We'll see you in the Discord. Good luck.
Good luck tonight, everyone.